Well, good morning, Rotary District 7770, and welcome to Conversations with Rotary Action People for Friday, September 18th. My name is Donald Hovis from the Chicora Rotary Club in Myrtle Beach, and I'm your CWRAP host. And today we are joined by Melissa Hanson with the Savannah River site. Good morning, Melissa.
Morning.
We will get to you in just a few minutes. Those of you on the call, thank you for being here. I want you to go to the chat box and I want you to do two things. And we're going to see who answers this question correctly first. Okay? So today is September 18th and it's a Friday, but what is today? Also in the chat box, put your Rotary Club. Don't go to Google. You cannot Google what is today. Let's see if someone is very smart. I know what it is and I'll give it away if no one gets it. And then also tell us in the chat box your Rotary Club, where you're watching from today. And then today is also Friday. And if you were given the opportunity, somebody said you could leave in 5 minutes with one bag, where would you go for the weekend? No, don't worry about the cost. Just for the weekend. Someone gave you the opportunity. Where would you go today? All right, I will kick us off with the vision statement of Rotary. Together we see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in our communities, and in ourselves. Someone said National Cheeseburger Day. That could possibly be it, but that is not the answer I'm looking for. Introducing our CWRAP team, our public image chair from the 5 Points Rotary Club in Columbia, Mary Gask. Good morning, Mary. And our district communications officer from the Somerville Evening Rotary Club in Somerville, Mr. Terry Moore. Terry, good morning. Thank you for running the stream for us and doing everything you do for CWRAP. All right. So, Melissa, the title of the presentation is, the Savannah River site, bombs, ? Nuclear reactors, ? So, I believe you have a presentation you want to share, and we'll let you get that going.
Great, thank you. And I know y'all normally do this as an interview kind of style, but we have a lot of really great historic photographs that I wanted to share. And then I'm going to give you kind of a sneak peek into some of our artifacts. So we'll just hit a few highlights, but I wanted you to be able to see all of those. So we will jump right in. So I am Melissa Hanson. I'm the curator at the Cold War Historic Preservation at Savannah River site. And really, I just wanted to start off with what the basics of our program, kind of why we're on site, what our collection includes. So I work for a company called New South Associates. We are a subcontractor to Savannah River Nuclear Solutions. That's one of the main contractors on site. And we have Department of Energy oversight. So we are kind of a federally run, we have government-owned property in our collection. And so we are located on site. The building that I work in on a regular basis is located behind the security fence. And so it does create some interesting kind of situations as far as public outreach, but it gives us a great opportunity to have the unique kind of where we're on the ground, where history was happening, but it's an active site still. It's an active industrial site. So it's definitely a unique situation, but it's great because we have employees who really take a lot of pride in their work, and they get really excited about the artifacts too. So most of the time, artifacts are coming to me instead of me having to go and find them on site. So it's just a really good relationship being able to work on site. We have about 6,000 artifacts in our collection. So here you can see kind of our main artifact storage. We are not a museum. So our goal on site is to protect the artifacts. So providing climate control, but we are not, and probably will never be set up like a museum setting that you're used to. We also have a large document room that includes things like newspapers, great photograph collection, all kinds of reports, maps, like I said, a whole room dedicated just to the paper artifacts, and also a lot of building models that were used on site. So just the basics of what our program does. So it started in the late 90s as the site was starting to reach the 50-year mark. Our program got started with doing a building survey. The National Historic Preservation Act of 1966 kind of designates that federal properties need to be considered for historical properties. So when they were reaching the 50-year mark on site, there was a building survey done of all the buildings on site, and about 200 were found to be historically significant. And so those buildings are not on the National Register, but they are National Register eligible. So because of that, the federal act and them being federal buildings, they are considered they are treated as if they're on the National Register, and they can be cleaned up as the buildings are no longer needed, but some kind of mitigation has to happen between the Department of Energy and the State Historic Preservation Office, just to make sure that history is still being captured. Part of what came out of that were the written history volumes, and I have a link at the end of the presentation that has all of these are available in PDF format online, but basically the site is very large. It's about 310 square miles, and so it's divided into what we call areas, where different pieces of the puzzle kind of during the Cold War, they were trying to make weapons material, but the site all kind of came together in different areas to make the reactors work, basically. And so the way we've divided up the histories is based on each of those areas. So these written volumes, they go through the construction history, the operations history, and then lots of photographs. They're really written for the public to be able to get a good understanding. So if you're interested at all in the Savannah River site history, this will be a great resource for you to check out. Public outreach, like I said, we are located behind the fence, so that kind of causes some problems sometimes with getting the public on site, but we do a lot of public outreach still. We're able to do presentations like this. We're able to loan out, and we have some exhibits around the area. And then we do have a few opportunities for public bus tours. And again, I have some information about those at the end of this presentation. And then artifact preservation, we've talked about a little bit already. That's kind of what I do on a daily basis. So making sure that the climate control is correct, that we're keeping inventory, that kind of thing. All right, so now we're going to get into kind of the real history of Savannah River site. So during the Cold War time, when the reactors were operating, the site was known as Savannah River Plant. So a couple of things we'll just go ahead and get out of the way. There were no bombs ever made at the bomb plant. Some of you may have heard it called the bomb plant before, but the weapons material was made, but the bombs were not actually put together. And then also, there are no reactors running currently. All of the reactors were shut down in 1989 whenever there was a transition to environmental management. So those are kind of the basics to get out of the way. But let's talk a little bit about why the site was needed, kind of why the reactors were running in the first place. So in the beginning of, it was 1949, we'll start there. The Soviet Union developed the atomic bomb, and the United States had the atomic bomb technology for a few years already. But with the Soviet Union developing the atomic bomb, it really kind of put pressure on the United States to have an upper hand. And so President Truman decided that we should move forward with creation of the hydrogen bomb. The hydrogen bomb would use plutonium that the atomic bomb was already using. So plutonium was already being produced in the United States, but tritium would be needed kind of as that extra boom in the hydrogen bomb. So they knew how to make tritium, but there wasn't a plant that was dedicated to making tritium at the time. And so DuPont was asked to begin looking for a location. DuPont ended up being the contractor for both the operations and for the construction of the site. So DuPont started looking for a location. They had a whole list of site criteria that they were looking for. And in the bottom corner here, the map, I hope that y'all can see, it's kind of the outline of South Carolina. We have a large map. It's kind of a series of 20 geological maps that are all, they were glued together in 1950 as a site location map. So this was of the Southeast. They were looking at, this is just a portion of the map. They were looking for kind of the layout of how it would work in each of the states. So they had over 100 sites that they were looking at across the nation, and they were kind of mapping out what they would look like in each of the areas. So that included looking for a river source, what the population looked like. And so this map, if you can see it, there are actually X's through this certain areas that were not going to be good locations. So this map, we recently had it conserved with an art conservator. It was cleaned, we have it digitized. So we're really excited about what we're going to be able to kind of do with this map and to research and sharing it with the public. My favorite thing about this map is that there is a cigarette burn in it. And so you can kind of picture the men all gathered around working on this map, trying to figure out where to put the Savannah River plant before they knew it was the Savannah River plant. So the site survey in the picture above the map it's called Plant 124 Site Survey, and that was before they ever knew where the site was going to be located. So they had narrowed it down to 4 locations, and this book, there were about 30 of these made, and we're lucky enough to have 2 in our collection. And it includes just a comparison of everything you can think of. They were looking at the geology, the weather, what the population was going to be like, if there was a river source, all of that, looking at how many hospital beds were there. They were looking for a low population density area where the site could be built, but they were also needing there to be surrounding communities that would be able to support all of the people moving into the area. So at peak, the site had about 37,000 workers. And so they knew that they needed to have enough to be able to support all those people, their families moving into the area. So the picture, the historic picture here is from our historic collection, and this is of Ellenton. So this is a pretty normal looking little town. This town though ended up being displaced by the site being moved. So about 6,000 people ended up moving in order for the site to be built. And there's actually an exhibit at the Savannah River Site Museum in downtown Aiken that we helped with to really just kind of tell the story of the people who were displaced by the coming of the site and kind of give their part of the history of really winning the Cold War and having the ability for the materials to be made. There, like I said, about 6,000 people and 6,000 graves were moved. And there were some people who obviously it was a very hard thing. No one was happy to be moving, but it really puts into perspective how big the threat of the Cold War was. Now I think it's kind of easy for us to look back and say, oh, well, not a lot happened. I mean, a lot happened, don't get me wrong, but there wasn't a lot of action, so to speak. And a lot of that came from the fact that people, like the people of Ellenton and Dumbarton and Myers Mill, they were displaced in order to work on this mission for national security. So just kind of the basics. We're not going to get into any of the technical stuff on reactors, but just there were 5 reactors that ran at Savannah River site. The site announcement happened November 28th, 1950. And by 1955, they had 5 reactors up, running, producing material. So you have to remember that's not just 5 reactors, that's all the support buildings. They were having to build roads, railroads, bringing in water, both for the reactor and for all of the employees. There's just a lot of infrastructure that was happening in order for the reactors to be running. Also on site, they were making their own reactor rods. And then once the reactor rods were irradiated, they would be taken to the separations area where they would be kind of processed out through a chemical separations process to make the product. And then also there would be radioactive waste left over from that would be stored in waste tanks. So all of that was happening on site. There were no bombs made on site, but there was a lot of tritium. Almost all of the nation's stockpile of Cold War tritium was produced at Savannah River. and about 36 metric tons of plutonium were also produced during the Cold War at Savannah River plant. So the picture here, you can see the process room, the reactor tank top that the man is standing working on to kind of give you some scale. Everything on site is difficult to explain to the public, the scale of the site. Like I said, it's about 310 square miles. All the buildings are kind of big, concrete, a lot of industrial looking buildings on site. But the tank top itself is about 16 feet diameter. So we're lucky enough in our collection to have the model you can see to the right here. This is not an old artifact, but it's a very useful artifact. It was actually printed by the Savannah River National Lab on a 3D printer. And so we were able to use it to talk about the reactor rods. The blue there represents water that would have been used in the tank. So a very useful source for us to be able to kind of point to a much smaller scale than the actual reactor tank. And then the reactor on sign above would have been lit just whenever there were, the reactor was running for people to be aware of in the area. And then security badges. So it's hard to give a presentation about Savannah River plant without talking about the security and safety on site. It's a record, it's an amazing record to look back at what all was being worked on and what continues to be worked on, and knowing the safety and security record that the site has. So DuPont, like I said, was the main contractor during the operations of the site, and they had their own patrol as well. So the patrol on site from DuPont Patrol was there from 1950 to 1984. And in 1984, there started being concerns about terrorism and just other concerns that they decided to go ahead and subcontract that out. And so they hired a company called Wackenhut, a subcontracted paramilitary group, to provide the security of the site. And that's still the same company. They've changed their name now to Centera, but the same company is still on site providing security today. And then someone mentioned their security or their employee badge earlier. So these are a couple of examples. This is not what they look like today, but the different colors, and there would be different letters that would be used for what kind of access the employees were allowed to have and that kind of thing. The picture above, I love. This is how they would make their badge pictures in the 1950s and 60s with the nameplate going across. And I've seen there was a site newspaper where they did a feature of how long it took to make a badge, and they were gluing them together. And of course, all of that is now done on computer. So it's just really interesting to see what all has stayed the same, but then also changed slightly. So, and then like I said, talking about safety, so of course there are radiation and contamination considerations that are very important when working with nuclear, but also it's a very large industrial site, and so just general industrial safety is really important as well on site. So the man here is dressing out to go into a radiation area, and I can't help but think, I'm not a nuclear person. I didn't know anything about nuclear until I started working at Savannah River. But I can't help but to think about the infrastructure piece of it and kind of the behind the scenes. And what fascinates me along with all the technology is things like laundry. So he's wearing a cotton suit that they would have been able to wash and reuse. And so their laundry department would have had a radiation monitor in it to check all of the equipment and all of the what they would be wearing. So just kind of thinking about those kinds of things, it's pretty neat to think behind the scenes with what all was happening on site. The film badge in the center would have had a piece of film that radiation exposure would have kind of developed the film so that they would be able to see what kind of radiation dose the person wearing it would get. The dosimeter at the bottom is a pencil dosimeter that would have had where the person could look into it. It was a self-reading. So kind of like a viewfinder, they would be able to look at what their dose was. And then the radiation monitor, a lot of the equipment on site was either purchased and then customized or just made on site. So we don't have a lot of details about who made this, but it definitely is not just purchased. So we think that the lab probably modified it. And then one of the favorite artifacts on site that we have is one of our 5 robots in our collection. So the Savannah River Lab was originally built on site in the 1950s. It's now a national lab. It received its national lab standing in 2004. But in the 1980s, there was a robotic department that was started, and they were purchasing robots. Typically, it would have been like law enforcement, bomb disposal robots that could go into areas that it was safer if people didn't go into, and they wanted to know if they could use those in contamination areas. Instead of a person having to dress out every time, they could send a robot in. So this is Simon. We also have an Alvin in our collection, but we do not have a Theodore. But Simon was purchased, and then they just kind of studied him. He ended up working in the lab. There's a hallway where a lot of experiments are done, and he had a radiation monitor attached to him, and he would just kind of roam the halls. We've heard that he had to work at night because the people, I don't know if the people were distracted by him or they were trying to distract the robot, but he ended up having to kind of work at night because of the employees that were distracting him. And then I have the continuing missions slide on here, but I have a great video that I want to show y'all. It has a lot of historic pictures, but also talks about the current missions. But in the 1990s, there was a shift to environmental management. Whenever DuPont, they ended up leaving the site in 1989, and Westinghouse took over. And so, like I said, there were no reactors running after 1989, and then they started kind of focusing on the cleanup missions. But because of the site's unique capabilities and kind of what it was designed to do, and that safety and security record, the site is kind of set up to have some really unique continuing missions to protect national security. So I'm going to play that video. And I forgot to click the button, so bear with me so I can share this sound with y'all.
Since the early 1950s and the dawn of the Cold War, the Savannah River site has served the nation. Originally known as the Savannah River Plant, the facility was constructed at a heroic pace. The goal? To develop and deploy nuclear technologies at scales never before imagined. For 7 decades, the nation has counted on SRS to be a force in science and technology. Innovative research performed by Savannah River National Laboratory scientists and engineers has led to countless patents and publications for DOE that benefit the nation's security and bring energy independence. With the end of the Cold War, the reactors were shut down and missions changed. But a steadfast tradition of safety and security remains. The goal is for every employee to arrive, work, and go home safely, and for our nation's valuable nuclear materials to be protected. From the time of the atomic age homesteaders in the 1950s until today, SRS has attracted the nation's brightest, most diverse talent. Diverse backgrounds bring diverse experiences and expectations, and the benefits from the resulting social, academic, and economic transformation to communities on both sides of the river can't be denied. For 7 decades, SRS has earned the community's support, trust, and respect with reliable stewardship of the environment and the nation's assets. Safe, effective cleanup of Cold War legacy nuclear materials continue. Breakthrough treatment technologies at the Defense Waste Processing Facility and Salt Waste Processing Facility help safely contain and dispose radioactive liquid waste. Deactivation and decommissioning of obsolete facilities also saves taxpayers' dollars. For 70 years, SRS has provided unparalleled community service and economic impact to the region through employee and corporate support of nonprofit agencies, colleges and universities, educational outreach, as well as business and economic development. The site has a $2.6 billion annual regional economic impact, with $200 million spent annually in local procurements. And over the past 10 years, SRS has donated millions to the local communities, which is matched by SRS employees through United Way and other charitable contributions. Today, site missions are diverse, but our foundational values remain. As we advance the goals of the DOE Office of Environmental Management and National Nuclear Security Administration in an ever-changing and always challenging world, SRS looks toward the future with anticipation. The NNSA announced plans to invest $3 billion at SRS over the next 5 years for both the proposed plutonium mission and upgrades to the site's tritium production facilities. Our missions may be challenging, but for SRS, there is one goal supporting all others. We make the world safer. This legacy exists because of the dedication and commitment of the workforce and community partners. Saluting SRS for 70 years of service.
So as you can see, there's a lot that's still happening on site, and a lot of history that happened during the Cold War as well. And the site is hiring, so if anybody knows anyone that's interested, definitely get in contact to do that. There's a lot that is still happening on site and current missions, as you can see. So just wanted to end with how to see some of the Cold War collection if you're interested. As I mentioned, the Savannah River Site Museum, it's located in downtown Aiken, and we're really excited about the exhibit. There's a lot of history of the displaced people, and there's a lot of interest from those residents. The former residents have visited the exhibit and they've been really excited about it. So we've had a lot of great feedback from our piece with that. We do have one small artifact that's on loan with that. It's a license plate topper that has H-bomb plant on it. So it was definitely called the bomb plant. It definitely got that nickname, but again, no bombs made on site, but very significant in making the bombs to protect the nation. And then we also, social media on the Savannah River Site Facebook page, almost every Thursday, they share a Throwback Thursday picture that includes photographs from our historic collection that we've helped to put together and curate to be able to share with the public. So those are very fun. We've been doing it for a couple of years now, and it's so fun to see all of the comments and conversation of people getting to kind of share with their family different areas that they've worked on site. The picture here is actually of two little people welders who were also in the Wizard of Oz, but it was really great. This was one of the best pictures kind of that we had a lot of feedback, and it was a lot of people who remembered. They were the David brothers, and they remembered them working with them. And then we also had a lot of welders. It was very exciting to see there were a lot of welders sharing their union number and that kind of thing. So a lot just to take away from one picture, it was a great, it gave me a little extra spirit that day for sure to see how many likes and how far that one got shared along the way. And then the public bus tours, those unfortunately are not happening right now due to COVID, but we're hoping to be able to start those back next year. They're canceled through the end of October right now. So we're waiting still to see what gets decided about. We have sorry, let me start back. There's 20 or so of those that happen each year, and about 4 of those are historic bus tours that actually come and see the curation facility. We go around a reactor, and then we also go to one of the former displaced towns. So 4 of those each year are usually the historic bus tours. So we have one more that might be happening in November. We're waiting to see. And then the dates for next year, those usually come out at the end of December. So keep an eye out for those. They're free tours. You just have to sign up. And usually they fill up pretty quickly. So if you're interested, I would definitely keep an eye out for those dates in December. And then the link down at the bottom is the link for those written histories. So that's the end of my presentation. I don't know if anybody has any questions or what our timing looks like.
Yep, we had 2 questions submitted. One has already been answered. So the first one is, I was told that at one time SRS had the highest density of PhDs in the country. Is that true?
I do not know that exact statistic. I know that the site being built definitely changed the demographic in the area because they were kind of recruiting PhDs, and with the national lab, I don't know if I could say yes or no on that one, but I'm sure it is up in their rankings with it having the national lab.
And then the other one, which has already been answered, was how many employees are currently working there, and that's 11,000, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Right around there, yes. Yes.
Yep. So that's all the questions as of now. So I asked earlier what today was, and someone did say National Cheeseburger Day, which today is National Cheeseburger Day, but that was not the answer I was looking for. It happens to also be National Tradesman Day, National Hug Your Boss Day, but the answer I was looking for is today is the birthday of the Air Force. The United States Air Force birthday is today. So I know our district is doing a great job, or will be doing a great job, recognizing our veterans. So if you're a veteran with the Air Force or any service, thank you for your service. So hint, hint, going forward, there's always going to be a question of the day on CWRAP, and it may be what is today. So I would say brush up on your skills, and you may win a prize one day. Who knows? But Melissa, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
As we do every Friday, we announce the next 3 speakers for CWRAP, which will come up Monday at 11, Wednesday at noon, and Friday at 11. On Monday, we have Alan Cooper with Midlands Biz. He's going to be talking about digital news. On Wednesday, the 23rd, Bob Wolf will be talking with us about exotics and other species. And then next Friday, a week from today, Dr. Harmon with the American Medical Association. So those are your next 3 speakers for CWRAP. Thank you again for being with us today. I will conclude with the Rotary 4-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Have a great weekend, everyone. That's a wrap for Conversations with Rotary Action People for Friday, September 18th. Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Melissa, thank you again for being with